Hello again! Today we are going to continue our journey through the theory of evolution by discussing a few of the common misconceptions surrounding evolution. Although the theory of evolution generated some controversy when Darwin first proposed it, biologists almost universally accepted it, particularly younger biologists, within 20 years after publication of On the Origin of Species.
So if the theory was almost universally accepted before, why do so many struggle with it today?
This is largely because the theory of evolution is a rather difficult concept, and there are many misconceptions and misunderstandings surrounding this theory and what exactly it is. So let's start with one of the first misconceptions that we hear about all the time, and that is evolution is just a theory. Critics of the theory of evolution dismiss its importance by purposefully confounding the everyday usage of the word theory with the way scientists use the word theory. In science, we understand a theory to be a body of thoroughly tested and verified explanations for a set of observations of the natural world. Scientists have a theory of the atom, a theory of gravity, and the theory of relativity, each which describes understood facts about the world. In the same way, the theory of evolution describes facts about the living world. As such, a theory in science has survived significant efforts to discredit it by scientists. In contrast, a theory in the common vernacular is a word meaning a guess or suggested explanation. This meaning is more akin to the scientific concept of hypothesis. When critics of evolution say it is just a theory, they are implying that there is little evidence supporting it, and that it's still in the process of rigorous testing, and this is a mischaracterization. Our second most common misconception surrounding evolution now is individuals evolve. I largely like to blame Pokemon for this misconception, but really there's more behind it than just that, right? Evolution is the change in a population's genetic composition over time, specifically over generations, resulting from differential reproduction of individuals with certain alleles. Individuals do change over their lifetime, obviously, but this is development and involves changes programmed by the set of genes the individual acquired at birth in combination with the individual's environment. When thinking about the evolution of a characteristic, it is probably best to think about the change of the average value, or frequency, of the characteristic in the population over time. For example, when natural selection leads to the bill size change or beak size change in medium ground finches in the Galapagos, this does not mean that individual bills on the finches are changing. If one measures the average bill size among all individuals in the population at one time, and then measures them in the population several years later, this average value will be different as a result of evolution. Although some individuals may survive from the first time to the second time that we measured, they will still have the same bill size, the individuals. However, there will be many new individuals who contribute to the shift in average bill size over time. This is why when we discuss evolution, we always look at it in regard to allele frequencies and how those frequencies change over time in a population. Now, moving on to our next item, we have gaps in the fossil record disprove evolution. Now, while it's true that there are gaps in the fossil record, and acknowledging this truth is very important, this does not actually constitute as evidence against evolutionary theory. Let's break it down. Scientists evaluate hypotheses and theories by figuring out what we would expect to observe if a particular idea were true, and then seeing if those expectations are borne out. If evolutionary theory were true, then we'd expect there to have been transitional forms connecting ancient species with their ancestors and descendants. This expectation has been borne out. Paleontologists have found many fossils with transitional features, and new fossils are discovered all the time. However, if evolutionary theory were true, we would not expect all of these forms to be preserved in the fossil record. Many organisms don't have any body parts that fossilize well. The environmental conditions for forming good fossils are quite rare, and of course, we've only discovered a small percentage of the fossils that might be preserved somewhere on Earth. So scientists actually expect that for many evolutionary transitions, there will be gaps in the fossil record. Now, it is a common misunderstanding that evolution includes an explanation of life's origins. Some of the theory's critics believe that it cannot explain the origin of life. However, the theory actually does not try to explain the origin of life. The theory of evolution explains how populations change over time and how life diversifies the origin of species. It does not actually shed light on the beginning of life, including the origins of the first cells which define life. Importantly, biologists believe that the presence of life on Earth precludes the possibility that the events that led to life on Earth can repeat themselves, because the intermediate stages would immediately become food for the existing living things. However, once a mechanism of inheritance was in place, in the form of a molecule like DNA, either within a cell or pre-cells, these entities would be subject to the principle of natural selection. More effective reproducers would increase in frequency at the expense of inefficient reproducers. So while evolution does not explain the origin of life, it may have something to say about some of the processes operating once pre-living entities acquired certain properties, such as DNA. Another common misconception is the theory surrounding the idea that organisms evolve on purpose. Statements such as organisms evolve in response to a change in an environment are quite common, but such statements can actually lead to two types of misunderstandings. First, do not interpret the statement to mean that individual organisms evolve, right? We went over that one. Because this statement is actually shorthand for a population evolves in response to a changing environment. However, a second misunderstanding may arise by interpreting the statement, organisms evolve in response to a changing environment, to mean that the evolution is somehow intentional. A changed environment results in some individuals in the population, those with particular phenotypes, benefiting and therefore producing proportionately more offspring than other phenotypes. This results in change in the population if the characteristics are genetically determined. It is also important to understand that the variation that natural selection works on is already in a population and does not arise in response to an environmental change. For example, applying antibiotics to a population of bacteria will, over time, select a population of bacteria that are resistant to antibiotics. The resistance, which a gene causes, did not arise by mutation because of applying the antibiotic. The gene for resistance was already present in the bacteria's gene pool, likely just at a low frequency. The antibiotic, which kills the bacterial cells without the resistance gene, strongly selects individuals that are resistant, since these would be the only ones that survived and reproduced. Experiments have demonstrated that mutations for antibiotic resistance do not arise as a result of antibiotics. In a larger sense, evolution is not goal-directed. Species do not become better over time, they simply track their changing environment with adaptations that maximize their reproduction in a particular environment at a particular time. Evolution has no goal of making faster, bigger, more complex, or even smarter species, despite the commonness of this kind of language in popular discourse. What characteristics evolve in a species are a function of the genetic variation present and the environment, both of which are constantly changing in a non-directional way. A trait that fits in one environment at one time may well be fatal at some point in the future. This holds equally well for species as like insects all the way to human species. This holds true. These are just a few of many, many misconceptions surrounding the theory of evolution. For a million more misconceptions, accompanied by clear explanations, check out this link through Berkeley, shown on the screen or in your course module. For us to effectively learn and grow as lifelong learners, it's important that we understand the terms we use in common vernacular, and how to use those terms appropriately so as to avoid spreading misconceptions ourselves, thus helping the next generation of lifelong learners learn and grow as well.